Come on in, sit back and relax. You're listening to the Wealth Tech Today podcast. I'm your host, Craig Iskowitz, founder of Ezra Group Consulting. This podcast features interviews, news, and analysis on the trends and best practices all around wealth management technology. My guest today was Leo Schrantz, Chief AI and Innovation Officer at Vestmark. What are some of the things we spoke about? Number one, AI agents are the next wave of technological innovation. We talk about operational efficiency through AI. This has been a big topic of conversation with all of our enterprise clients. How efficient is AI going to be? How will it help us? Where will we get the most bang for our buck? So we covered that. And also, Vestmark has a new AI assistant that they're launching as part of their portfolio management platform. It's going to be embedded directly into their advisor dashboard. I think it's got a lot of capabilities that you might be interested in listening to. You'll hear all that later once we start the program. But right now, if you've got a platform that does something like Vestmark does, which is portfolio management, reporting, and such, you most likely have a tech stack. If you have a tech stack, then we've seen it. At Ezra Group, we've seen literally hundreds of tech stacks of RIAs and broker-dealers. Let me tell you, most are loaded down with tech debt, probably yours. Let's face it, tech debt can act like an anchor, holding down your RIA's efficiency and ability to scale. If you want to free your firm for exponential growth, you need to run, not walk, to our website, ezragroup.com, and click the golden Contact Us button on the homepage. The experienced team at Ezra Group can evaluate your current tech ecosystem, deliver targeted recommendations, including whether you should use AI, and if so, which applications you should use to get the most bang for your buck. We can optimize your existing systems and platforms and operations. We can even run an RFP and help you implement new software to get your firm to the next level. Ezra Group just makes tech stacks better. You can take advantage of our free initial consultation by going to ezragroup.com. And now, please subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss an episode. Check out our sponsors, the Invest in Others Charitable Foundation at investinothers.org. And if you are a software vendor selling software to wealth management firms, you should go to our vendor portal, ezragroup.com/register, and sign up for registration for your product in our integration portal. There you will be able to update your integration data, letting us know exactly which applications you integrate with so that your wealth tech integration score will always be up to date. All right, now let's kick this thing off. All right, I'm excited to introduce my next guest. It is Leo Schrantz, Chief AI and Innovation Officer at Vestmark. Leo, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Greg. It's great to be here.
I am happy to have you. And if I'm not mistaken, you are a fan of the podcast.
I'm a huge fan of the podcast. When I first joined Vestmark almost 4 years ago, coming from Bain, I was looking for resources to really come up to speed on the industry. And I found this podcast and the transcripts in particular to be an incredibly valuable wealth of information on all things wealth tech. So it's an honor to be here, and hopefully I can help pay it forward for somebody new out there who's also trying to come up to speed.
Exactly. You're contributing to all the good karma on this program.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad it's all come full circle for you, Leo. Where are you calling in from?
I'm in Wakefield, Massachusetts, where our headquarters is located. We are occasionally down in Cambridge. We got a little fun labs facility down there, actually sitting alongside of some cool AI startup companies as well. But today I'm up in Wakefield, north of Boston.
Awesome. Well, I'm in beautiful New Jersey, a gray, rainy New Jersey. But let's jump in. Can you provide, for our listeners who may not be familiar with Vestmark, a 30-second elevator pitch?
Yeah, so Vestmark, we've been in the wealth tech space for almost 25 years now. Our real, core offering for a long time has been as a managed accounts platform. In the retail wealth segment. We are aggressively, expanding beyond just our traditional bread and butter of trading across UMAs, SMAs into, our recent launch of VAS, which is, our direct indexing and tax overlay service. And now most recently, we're launching our, suite of Vestmark Advisor tools, which is where our new Vestmark Advisor Assistant AI copilot will sit as well. And that's really trying to get into more of the, broader proposal generation, reporting, a little bit of billing, the broader suite of solutions that might be more today considered, portfolio management than what it was 20 years ago. So that's Vestmark. I'd say our strength has always been around, scale, personalization at scale, and anything that sort of touches on that is what we want to invest in. And that's another reason why we're so excited about AI, because we think this is kind of the next wave of innovation that's going to drive, personalization and wealth management technology in particular. So we're all in on AI here at Vestmark too.
I love to hear that. And that's what got me interested in talking to you, that there are many companies. I think like, we will see more companies create the role of chief AI and innovation officer. So this is new for you. So what does it mean at Vestmark and in practice? And well, obviously I know why Vestmark made this move now, but maybe you can explain a little more detail.
Yeah, so why now? Obviously, it's the wave of AI. I think why create this role is an interesting question. We debated it internally too, for a while. But we try to adhere as much as we can to, we aspire to like the Amazonian Amazon OP1 kind of process. There's a lot of different tenets to it. One of them is this idea of single-threaded leadership, and where that is best applied is when you have something that's just so critical to the company that you really need it to succeed. And I think we very firmly believe AI is a part of that, but you have everybody in the company or every different department, every different group needing to contribute something to the success of that mission. What you can see a lot of times is if you have something that's everybody's job, it quickly becomes no one's responsibility, right? It's a little bit of everybody's responsibility, but you don't really know where to go to maintain accountability against the objectives of the company. And so creating one role, the chief AI and innovation officer, and saying like, okay, across everything from, how are we adopting coding copilot tools to drive engineering efficiency, to where are we on our product roadmap to get AI in the hands of advisors on our new platforms, to where are we in, leveraging AI capabilities to drive efficiencies in-house in G&A or even in our own outsourced services group, looking across all those different distributed missions and concentrating them in one place so that we know as a company that, there's one voice that can communicate progress against that, where we're succeeding, where we're falling short, where we need to make more investment, where we need to dial back investment. That was the genesis behind creating that role. And then, why me is a good question. Because before I was doing this, one of the projects that I was managing, I was our EVP of projects and planning. Part of that was business planning. Part of that was special projects, was our early forays into building AI into some of our product suites, and specifically around early agentic AI adoption. So it was a kind of a natural transition for me into that role. I'm really honored to have it. I'm figuring it out along the way. I'm surrounded by a lot of really great colleagues here that are helping us make this role work. But it's really exciting, and I think it's an exciting time to be in that position. And I look forward to meeting more chief AI officers soon at more wealth tech companies, that I encourage other folks to adopt the same model.
I have a feeling you will be running into more and more AI officers. What they will do, I don't know. I know I saw news that was it either Shopify or another really big company just merged their HR with AI. Like the HR person is now the head of AI as well, because they want to verify that any hiring they do can't already be done by AI.
Yeah, it's an interesting proof point there in just how far along AI adoption has come. I think the other interesting lesson there is companies that are recognizing, and I don't know if this is what Shopify is doing, but we're having conversations, ourselves around, where, as you start to integrate AI into, workflows and applications, and it starts to, I won't say replace, but augment human beings, the way that you manage that AI, the types of mistakes it makes, the ways that it needs to learn tools and platforms, the way that you give it access to certain tools, it looks very, I hate to use the term, but human-like, right? Like you need to manage it with a human being. You need to sit it alongside other human beings. And so it is very much, we talk about it as a technology problem, but I think it's also an HR problem, right? Like how are you going to incorporate this new technology that in a lot of ways looks and feels inside of your operations like what people would be doing, like a person. I think that's probably something else there, a lesson learned.
It sure is. I mean, there's been a lot of hype around AI, but what are the areas that you're seeing real traction on?
Yeah, a lot of hype. I think, and this is a well-worn one, but in our space in particular, it's a lot of the note-taking, applications. That's caught fire. There's been several very successful ones out there raising good amounts of capital, seeing a lot of user adoption. What's interesting to me about that as a proof point is it's an interesting indication of what other types of technologies might be next. So why did note takers take off so successfully in our space? I think one, it's a good application of recent developments in AI in particular. So, ChatGPT comes on the scene. That's a pure large language model with a chat interface wrapped around it, but it doesn't have any context or information about, your particular clients or any situation beyond just what's in its training data set. Combine that with, retrieval augmented generation or RAG, and now all of a sudden you can bring to the foray your own your own data, your own information, in particular, data that's unstructured. And notes is exactly that use case, right? Like I have notes, I want to apply it, run it through an LLM and give me a better summary, right? Inside of our space, that saves advisor time. So that's one indication of what's going to drive adoption using, the latest and greatest in AI technology. And three, it really has a nice, wealth tech financial services moat around it for those companies to be able to grow without getting swallowed up by other, third parties that could launch this themselves. And that moat is very much around compliance, very much around customizing how that's going to get deployed for, your particular workflow, how you want those notes to be structured. So it has it hit all the right boxes, I think, that technology for rapid adoption in our space. And what we should be looking for in terms of like what's next or what other tools check similar boxes and are using new advancements. And so I think that's where, to extend on this question, agents come into play. Right, that's the next sort of wave of tech that's leveraging advances in large language models combined with RAG, now combined with APIs and tools. And you've had very similar things. It can save the advisor's time, operates inside of existing software platforms. Right, to me, it looks like the next wave of adoption will be in that sort of space for those same reasons.
So I'm just going to stay with agents. So I'm seeing agents everywhere, considering
Yeah.
all the work that I'm doing. But I'm also seeing firms that are coming out with their agents building other agents.
Yeah.
So first of all, you mentioned RAG. I don't think a lot of people know what that is. If you can just explain what that is, and then also then talk about the difference between an agent and what the generative AI tools are doing now for us.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and it builds nicely that way. So if you think about, what makes up an agent, starts with the large language model, right? And the advances that we've seen in large language model technology. That's your Claude Sonnet 3.7 or your, OpenAI 0304. It's the core building block of all these technologies, right? Then what retrieval augmented generation is what if I provide that large language model with a repository of documents that have been vectorized and encoded. And I won't go that deep in this podcast into what goes on in the background there. But basically, what if I gave it additional information that it didn't have when it was trained, right? And the ability to go and retrieve that in order to generate an answer that's more helpful. So what does this look like in wealth tech? Well, if you ask, ChatGPT how Vestmark 1 works, it might give you an answer, right? But it's going to
I
be
want to do
completely
that.
different, right? It'll give you something, right? But it probably won't be very helpful.
Mhm.
Give that our help guide, right, and the ability to retrieve information from that help guide. Now you get a very good answer, right? Because it'll be able to leverage that as a resource to provide you with how that works. So that's large language model with those resources. That's retrieval augmented generation. Where do agents come into play? Well, let's add one more thing. What if in addition to giving it the help guide, you give it the APIs inside of the system, right? Whatever subset you want to give it to, in order to be able to do things on your behalf, right? So if I ask it, hey, how do I create a proposal in Vestmark Advisor, right? It can give you that answer using the help guide. But if I say, I want you to create a proposal for Craig, and here's the holdings I want you to use, and here's the targets I want you to use, and generate that for me. If you've got the right underlying APIs, leveraging both the large language model, the knowledge of how the system works, its ability to use its own thinking, chain of thought prompting, and these, you've heard about these advances in thinking models and the underlying tools. And now you have a full-blown agentic assistant that can go and do that on your behalf, right? And that's the really exciting thing about agents and how they kind of build up as we've seen advances in the technology. So I don't know if that answers your question. Hopefully that's a helpful explainer for everybody,
Oh yeah.
but also why it's so exciting.
Do you see more agents becoming? How fast do you see agents taking over in wealth management?
Taking over is an interesting question because I don't think it's going to take over necessarily like the traditional work that a financial advisor would be doing inside a platform, but I do think it's going to radically change the way we interact with tools and technology. So we were already kind of seeing this today. You're a software company, you're building tools for an end user. You start with what does the user want to accomplish, right? And then you build a UI that sits on top of your data, on top of your tools and all that sort of thing to let them execute their own workflows. When you create an assistant, right, an agentic experience inside of that AI, all of a sudden now you've given the user almost two ways to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And one can be better than the other depending on the use case. So I'll give you an example, right? That create a proposal use case, it can be sometimes better to go through the traditional UI, in which case you don't really want the agent to do it. Why? Well, because you can just do it faster. You click the buttons and you're done. But if you want to do something in bulk, do like 10 of them, or take one thing and modify it 10 times, That's a place where an agent could be a lot more helpful than the traditional user trying to replicate a task inside of a traditional software platform on its own. And what's so exciting about that to me when you talk about like taking over wealth management, or wealth management technology usage, is it starts to unlock use cases that we don't have today because they just take too long or the software just doesn't support it. Right. So you can if you have an embedded assistant that can use that tool, that technology, that platform the same way you would, but it's using it at software levels of scale and software levels of speed, right? That unlocks whole new use cases for that technology that we just don't have today. And I think it'll be really exciting to see how quickly that comes online and then what that does to sort of augment and take over the advisor experience and then ultimately the client experience, like what they're getting out of their advisors leveraging these platforms.
Would you think there would be more wealth management firms replacing advisors with agents?
Placing advisors with agents, that's hard because I think one of the most important things about agents and AI technology today is understanding where it's critical to put humans in the loop, right? I don't think we're at a place where it makes sense to have an AI or an agentic AI experience really operating with discretion, right? Like to use that highly regulatory term, right? Like that's not the sweet spot for AI right now. You want to put a human in the loop where the risk is highest of crossing that financial advice creation or financial advice delivery boundary. So what does that look like, for us, for example, right? Obviously, we're a trading and rebalancing platform at our core. That's always been a key component of our business. Asking an AI agent to go off and perform, a tax loss harvest rebalancing session and propose the trades and say like, hey, if you wanted to harvest losses from Craig's account, right? Like we could provide the tools and generate the suggested trades to go and do that. But to execute the trades, right? To click the button, right? That's a place for us where it's like, no, we're going to put a human in that loop, and only a human being is going to be able to do that. Not because technologically speaking, an agent couldn't do it. Sure, it could, but like for us, it's important to say, no. We need people in there because we want a check on the AI, and we want to make sure that we're aligning with the compliance standards that have been out there for technology for forever, right? Like, and I think that's really important, is being smart and intelligent about where you're putting that advisor in the loop in the agentic AI experience. So that's at least one boundary that we've put in place. I think there's other ones there too. So I don't think, barring some radical change or in how we think about the regulatory framework, I don't think AI is going to fully displace financial advisors. If for any other reason, then we still operate under a framework that requires a human being to be involved in this process.
Let's move on from financial advisors. Let's talk about operations. So,
Yeah.
operational pain points. What are some of the biggest operational pain points that you see AI be able to deliver meaningful ROI for advisory firms?
Yeah, meaningful ROI, I think, is the critical point. Because I think there's a lot of places where it can shave off, a couple minutes here or there, depending on what it is you're trying to do. For us, I think one of the recent innovations that we're really excited about, and it hasn't gotten a lot of talk, is computer use. So I don't know how familiar you are with computer use. Is that something?
Well, it depends what you mean by computer use, my friend.
Yeah. Well,
I
this is the
think
thing
it's
in AI,
referring to
right?
something else
Yeah.
than the normal understanding of computer use.
So back in like October, it was Anthropic released like an early version of this. And basically everything we just said about agents, right? But instead of the tools that they're using being software, right? Like APIs inside of a software application, imagine that tool that they're using is an actual mouse and a keyboard, right? And those sorts of capabilities. I think when we think about like operations, or he'd use the term like back office or back end sort of tools, a lot of that work is moving between systems, right? Where you don't have natural integration points. And one of the challenges with agents today is they are very, very good when you have APIs that you can feed them, right? So operating inside of a box, so to speak. You want to start to interact outside of that box, and all of a sudden the agent framework starts to break apart a little bit. Now, there's been really recent advances in agent to agent interaction. So if I have an agent, you have an agent, and we're in two different systems, they can interact. That helps get across some of the data interoperability issues. But either way, a lot of work today is I have to get from my email piece of information out and put it into this system. I have to get in this system, get this piece of information out and put this file over here. Computer use in AI is a place that could really change the game in that. And we're doing some early experiments in it. It's very exciting. It's not the fastest tool on the planet of doing some of this stuff because the way
Right.
this is taking screenshots and consuming it and then waiting for the mouse to move. But it shows a lot of promise, I think, in bridging the gap between AI for, call it, consumer or end user facing tools in in one application versus AI across multiple applications. That's one I think to keep an eye on. I think that is going to generate meaningful ROI. I don't think it's that far away from really moving the needle in certain places. So that's one we're excited about.
That's where I see AI having a huge impact right away because it's not directly interacting with clients, but any operational task that can be done currently recon. Why can't recon be done by AI? It's so
Yeah.
mind-consumingly tedious.
And I mean, building off of that, the other thing where we have seen meaningful improvement is there are a lot of tasks, and I'm sure Vestmark isn't the only company in this camp. And I'm sure wealth tech companies all over the place could, or even just wealth firms all over the place have project work that exists not because you can't automate it, but because the amount of time it would take to develop the application to automate it just isn't worth the return on investment, right? Like it doesn't save enough time to put an engineering team on solving this particular problem. AI, and in the hands of an engineer, dramatically lowers that cost to automate that task and build that application out. And I'm not just saying this, we have internally just completed a project where we had one engineer working part-time over 6 weeks, developed an entire application, front end, back end integration to automate a component of, I think it was a like withdrawal request sort of thing. That is exactly the kind of work that we know we could have automated before, but it would have taken a whole engineering team, maybe 3 to 6 months, and maybe not even that long. But it would have taken significantly more investment, and therefore you just don't get around to it. I think the haven't gotten around to it, fruit that wasn't low hanging is now hanging much lower on the tree, so to speak, with AI to be able to go after it, and that's gonna drive a lot of efficiency improvements today. And I think, even if you're not a wealth tech firm, you're a wealth management firm, and maybe you've got an IT team of 3 or 4 people, I would encourage them, if they're not already, to see how far can you get in building some of those tools for yourself. And I think you'd be surprised how quickly you can build something that really saves yourself a meaningful amount of time. We're having success with that at Vestmark. I'm sure other firms can as well.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of CEOs of software, and they're talking about the incredible increase in productivity that they're seeing, especially around testing and development. This is a little bit in the weeds, but my experience as a comp sci major and coming up to the ranks as a programmer and network engineer and business analyst is that instead of business analysts writing specs and then handing the spec to a programmer, now business analysts can vibe code the app how they want it and then hand that to the developer. They can really get an understanding of what they're looking for. Then they can optimize it, improve it. Do you see that? Are you guys doing that at Vestmark at all?
We're experimenting with it. We're having some success with it. That one use case I just gave you was an actual experienced engineer, right? So not somebody like just a pure product manager, somebody who doesn't have a technical background going after a problem like that. But vibe coding is something that we're definitely trying to push. I love that term. I've also heard it stands for very insecure backend engineering is one of them. So something to watch out for, right? Because these coding copilot tools, with the right context and frameworks can crank out just fantastic code to solve your problems, but they don't necessarily know what your standards are or where the pitfalls lie in terms of data access or user access rights. You still need to be bringing that knowledge to the table, right? And so I think the right mix right now is probably an engineering team, business analyst, and a coding copilot tool, right? Working together to automate the things that could be automated to gain speed and scale where it makes sense, but still having the right checks in place. It's very similar to what we said before about having a human in the loop for AI as a use case. We're still going to need people as we advance on this AI journey. But what those people are doing is probably going to change, right? Like you're going to be spending less time writing unit tests and more time, focusing on the things that can create the most value.
Value is the key. That's how do we
Absolutely.
bring value. Is there any specific areas when we're talking about AI being embedded into your platform architecture that Vestmark is focusing more on when it comes to you're focusing more on advisor experience, home office experience, investment workflows? Where do you see where are you guys applying it the most?
Yeah, I think priority one right now for us is our Vestmark Advisor Assistant embedded in our new advisor experience. We're aiming to launch that next couple of months. They told me not to give an exact date, but I have an exact date in mind. It's
Never
very
give
soon.
exact dates, Leo.
That's it. I was guided to not say that, but it's soon. Honestly, like the things we're working through to get that all the way to production, less technical and it's more okay, like let's have the conversation about, data and how that flows and, Vestmark level of comfort, client level of comfort, compliance team level of comfort. Where are we in terms of how this is architected and everybody understanding what data is going where it's being processed, how it's being processed, how it's being stored, and coming up with those initial contracts that everyone is agreed to. That's where a lot of the rubber is meeting the road on that right now. I think, we're making great progress on other strides, but that's obviously priority one. I think, internally we've already, embraced fully a lot of the AI tools for coding. I think went through a similar process there of getting comfortable with the idea of like, what do I really want to share my code? Maybe some's fine, some maybe not, right? You keep the crown jewels hidden away, but everything else is okay. How are we going to test the code that's generated from that? Do we want like humans? So we've worked through those issues, and now we're in the generating value component of it, like as we mentioned before. And I think thinking about operational efficiency, it's all right. How do we combine some of those elements together to create efficiencies for ourselves, right? What does the advisor assistant look like for our users of our platform, behind the scenes, where we have that in place? Where does that make the most sense? That's the natural next evolution to make.
So you've mentioned the Vestmark AI assistant a couple times. So what does it look like, and how close are we having it? I know you can't say exactly, but what will it be? What will advisors be able to do with the Vestmark AI assistant?
That's a great question. So what it is imagine, and I hate to use this term, it is a full agentic AI system, but most people will be maybe more familiar with like a chatbot kind of thing. Like, you go on a website and you click a button and you get a pop out. Now you're in a chat interface, right? So that's kind of what it looks like. But what's critical is that it's embedded in our platform. It's not a separate URL or a separate experience. It's fully embedded inside of your Vestmark Advisor dashboard system, right? So what it can do is, number one, answer general questions about how the platform works, leveraging our help guide and materials like that. So it just helps you get up to speed faster on how the platform operates, right? So that's value add number one. And I think actually that shouldn't be understated how much value that can create for firms, especially these ones that are rapidly growing. You're going through a lot of acquisitions, or you're, in a roll-up phase. Like, one of the things you got to do is bring people up to speed on your technology. And that's one place where I think we're already seeing a lot of value add. The second thing you can do is get information from the platform for you, right? So I want to know, what's the total AUM in, Craig's account? Okay, well, ask that question and it'll go navigate its way through the system, retrieve that piece of information, and then provide it back to you, right? So that can be helpful. One, if you just want to, point question, but two, if you're trying to compare different things. So, one of the demos we love to give is, maybe I ran a proposal for you 3 months ago, and then we had another meeting and I ran another proposal, and now I'm going back to demonstrate, present that final proposal to you. But I want to compare what was different between the two. It's been, maybe 2 months between the two meetings. You can ask the assistant, hey, can you compare what the difference is between the two most recent proposals I ran for Craig? And then you'll get your answer back with the summaries right there. So that's leveraging the agentic AI capabilities combined with the large language models to provide a generative summary. And then the last task is, do things for you. So, hey, can you rerun Craig's proposal, but increase the funding from 500,000 to $1 million? And then it'll go retrieve the old information, update that to $1 million, punch it back through the system. And what's critical is you'll get the output inside of the platform, just like if you click the buttons, right? So it's a natural integration of the two systems. It's not a separate tool; it's an embedded tool that we're really, really excited about. So that's what it can do. I think when we go live, it will be heavily focused on general account information, household account, client information, and a lot on our proposal generation system. On the roadmap is obviously the other components that go along with that: reporting, billing, trading when that goes live in our new advisor experience. That's a kind of natural evolution. It will scale with capabilities as our platform scales with capabilities. That's the hope.
Vestmark also has pretty good market share on the asset management side.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any asset management AI use cases you guys are working
on? I mean, inside of our VAST suite, which is another tool that I think maybe is what you're trying to dig into more details on there. We have some agentic capabilities built out into that. Our long-term plan is to bring that sort of proposal generation experience that has, tax overlay and direct indexing custom models to be more fully integrated with the Vestmark Advisor general proposal generation experience. When that comes online, right, we will provide our AI assistant with the same sort of tools and technologies to do all the same things that I mentioned before. What's interesting there, I think, is it doesn't get as much conversation, but one of the things I'm most excited about with agentic AI is the ability to know what advisors are asking for, right? And start to get that in like a conversational conversational interface, right? So if you're an advisor and you're navigating the complexities of a custom model, right? Especially nowadays when we're starting to put, alternative sleeves in there and alongside liquid UMAs, like there's a lot of complexity in these custom models, which is great because it creates a ton of value for the client. But that puts a lot of new burden, so to speak, on the advisor to know and understand all of the things and moving parts and pieces that are within that. I think the ability for one to have an assistant that can receive those questions and then generate an answer, not just off of random things off the internet, but the actual underlying materials that those custom model developers would want that to be retrieved on is really valuable. And for the ability to then have a database of what those questions are to share back with the asset manager to say, like, hey, here are the top 10 questions that people are asking about your products inside of our platform, right? What does this mean to you? Or, and this is what we're really excited about, real-time sort of information like, hey, financial advisor A was asking about this thing, right? Click 16 different buttons and didn't put it in. Now all of a sudden you go from a world where wealth tech is just SaaS to like, oh, you start to look almost like the things that e-commerce platforms have. Like I can provide you real insights into what your users, what your consumers are looking for in ways that are really valuable. Now it's obviously exciting as a wealth tech company, but really I think it's really exciting for the industry, right? Because that's just getting more information upstream and downstream faster. That is going to be better for end investors and end clients. And that's something that we're really excited about as an added benefit of this agent experience.
It sounds really cool. And I'm excited to see this come to fruition whenever it might happen, whatever the time frame is.
As soon as I can. That's fine.
Seems like it's right around the corner, right? But we are out of time, Leo. So where can people listening find out more information about Vestmark?
Well, we have our website, vestmark.com, right? And then, I think as a company, we try to be as approachable as possible. Like I'm on LinkedIn. If you want to know more about what we're doing in AI, please reach out. We get you in contact with anybody you want to know more about. So I would love to continue the conversation with anybody out there who wants to know more about what we're doing.
Fantastic. Leo, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the time. This was fun.
Hey, it's Craig again. Here are my top 3 takeaways from this episode. Number 1, Leo and I talked about AI agents and how they couldn't be transformative. Emerging AI technologies can automate complex workflows, enabling wealth management platforms to create more efficient, personalized experiences that were previously impossible. Number 2, AI will dramatically reduce automation costs. Wealth management firms can now solve operational challenges quickly and cost effectively, even with small engineering teams, because they'll be able to develop sophisticated automation tools that would have previously required extensive resources. And finally, AI assistants will reshape advisor interactions. Embedded AI tools like Vestmarks will provide real-time support, information retrieval, and task execution, and will fundamentally change how advisors interact with technology while maintaining critical human oversight. And that's what matters, critical human oversight. And speaking of humans, you are one, and you've reached the end of this episode of the Wealth Tech Today podcast. Thanks for listening. But before you go, please mosey on over to our website, EzraGroup.com. Scroll to the bottom of our homepage and sign up for our newsletter. Once a month, you receive an email chock full of wealth management goodness, news, information, and updates. You'll not be disappointed. Thanks again for listening, and talk to you all again next time.